a magic circle appeared, and smoke started to rise. The woman holding a book greeted him and introduced herself. She is what the people often call the goddess. She turned and was about to explain the current situation, but suddenly flinched when she realized he had already come a while ago. The boy smiled awkwardly and greeted her. It had only been 10 minutes. He scratched his head and asked for an explanation of his current situation in 20 words or less. He is Takafuji Inori, a human. He has 105 health points, 103 mana points, 105 strength, 96 vitality, 110 dexterity, 121 agility, and 100 intelligence. His gifts were improved growth rate, 5 times gained experience points, and halved required experience points. The space between the worlds, those who would be summoned to another world, would be brought to this place without exception. And here, they would be granted with one ability. A gift would be granted as a blessing for setting off to another world. However, the same person visiting this place multiple times has never happened before. The goddess looked at the boy with a confused expression. If he were to explain it in place of the goddess that has grown senile in front of him, this is the so-called another world transfer, which has been trending recently. The boy's name is Takafuji Inori. Just around 10 minutes ago, he was sent to another world from this place. The Heian kingdom of another world, Bells. They summoned him and his classmates as heroes from another world to fight against the evil demon lord and whatnot, or that was supposed to be. His classmate called out to him, pointing to his feet. Another magic circle had appeared. He wondered what was happening before flinching and noticing it was just under his feet. The magic circle started to glow and enveloped him in light. In the castle of Bells, the king asked what that light was earlier, and his subordinate reported that one of the heroes had disappeared, shocking the king. In the present, Inori explained that after that, before he knew it, he had already come back to the starting point. He asked what was going on and if he died. The goddess apologized and said she had no idea either. Inori didn't really get it, but since he returned here, he asked if he would be summoned again. The goddess wasn't entirely sure either, but she would give him a gift for the time being since it was the rule. It's his second one, but rules are rules. The goddess didn't quite understand, but cheered and waved at him regardless. Inori questioned the goddess' carefree cheering. Once again, he was wrapped in a torrent of light and sent to yet another world. When he opened his eyes, he was met with a crazy-looking man. The crazy man exclaimed happily, saying he had done it and could continue his experiment again. He seemed to be a scientist. The crazy scientist welcomed Inori to another world. Inori's body was bound by chains, and a mask covered his mouth. He'd rather not wake up to a crisis right after the summoning. The crazy scientist stared at him closer, saying he could see a strong will in Inori's eyes. The thought that he can experiment on Inori's body from now on excites him. Inori internally complained about the creepy man being annoying. He was too close. His nose was going to touch him. He then wondered what was happening because he couldn't move, regardless of the chain. The crazy scientist seemed happy that the magic eye of restraint worked just fine. 2 armored knights stood behind him. Inori flinched, noticing their eyes. They weren't normal eyes. Instead, they looked like they had patterns on them. The crazy scientist explained that it was a magic eye. As for the subject that he will be experimenting with, he will be experimenting with the magic eye Inori possesses. He excitedly exclaimed that those who were summoned from another world would appear with magic eyes without exception, and it was their job to conduct experiments with them. Inori realized that the magic eye the crazy scientist was talking about was the gift for coming to this world. The crazy scientist ended their chit-chat and ordered one of the armored knights to appraise Inori's eyes. The armored knight grabbed his head and raised him. He appraised that Inori had 2 magic eyes using his magic eye of appraisal. The black-colored right eye is the magic eye of vision, which specializes in seeing, appraisal, and photographic memory. While the golden-colored left eye is the magic eye of formation, it allows one to store magic formation in the eye. Inori was confused because both of his eyes were originally black. He wondered if he was odd-eyed now, which made him feel like a Chunibyo. The crazy scientist squealed and seemed excited that he had 2 magic eyes. He quickly ordered them to put him on the bed and bring his tools so they could start the experiment. Just then, a bright light covered Inori and returned him to the starting point. The goddess turned to him in shock. It was his 3rd time, confusing the goddess. She asked if he had fallen for her. Inori sat up and greeted her. He noticed her speaking in a completely plain tone already. It was not like he kept coming because he wanted to. It was beyond his control. However, if he was asked whether he liked her or not, he liked her. She's good-looking, and she also has a good figure. But he'd prefer it if she wore something less revealing, if possible, before realizing there was no point in him getting close to her. The goddess flipped through the book, saying this is the first time an abnormal situation like this has happened, so she'll try to look into this matter. She closed the book and told him she'd let him know if there was another chance. Light covered Inori as he told her he'd be counting on her. Inori had his arms behind his back as he thought about the chance the goddess talked about. It said that what happens twice will happen thrice. But it'd be kind of a bummer if the thrice didn't happen. Upon being summoned, Inori opened his eyes and saw a curly-haired girl panting, saying she did it. She held her teacher's hands, cheering at the successful summoning. Her teacher, a woman with glasses and a bun, replied that it was expected of her student, Reed. Inori watched them, wondering what the matter was because she seemed overjoyed. Then, he noticed her long ears. It seems the summoner this time is what they call elves. The teacher patted Reed's head, praising her. To think that she summoned a humanoid demon on her first summoning ceremony. Inori flinched and was surprised when he heard that. Now, he looked like a demon with fangs and black wings on his back. The teacher told her he seemed like a vampire because those sharp fangs were their characteristics. Inori asked what that was and if he stopped being human. Reed held on to her teacher and was surprised that he talked. The teacher observed him and concluded that he was a named one. She told Reed how only a few high-ranking demons could speak. Reed was excited as she touched his wings, saying he seemed to be Baron class, or perhaps an Earl class demon. They rubbed and touched Inori, clearly happy about the summon. However, if they take too much time, he'll disappear. Like now, he was covered in light. The time was up. The two were surprised and reached their hand out, but he had already returned to the starting point. The goddess turned to him and asked if he was getting sick from being summoned repeatedly. If he wants to end this quickly, he should make a contract the next time he's summoned and bind his soul in that world. Inori thought about the contract. The first time aside, compared to that creepy professor from the second time, the third time was a jackpot. And there's a good chance he'd get something even worse in the next summon. Inori thought about it before the goddess waved her hand to bid goodbye. Inori thought that in the next world, if everything looks good, he'll take it seriously. Once summoned, he got up as the woman who summoned him thanked him for coming this late in the night and welcomed him to their world. She introduced herself as Canna Sulfia, the first princess of the kingdom of Sulfia. She asked him to save their world from the hands of the demon lord. Inori walked towards her and leaned closer, staring at her face. She is a beautiful princess with light blue hair and light blue eyes. The summoning detail is to be a hero, so they wouldn't seem to treat him badly either. Canna blushed and told him he was too close. Suddenly, the guard with Canna grabbed Inori's shoulder and cursed at him, saying that even if he was a hero, he was being rude to her. Inori punched the guard by the chin, causing his nose to bleed. He thought he was annoying, but was okay with this place. So, he grabbed Canna, told her there wasn't much time, and asked if there was a way to seal a contract with him as a hero. Canna, who was surprised, flinched but eventually told him there was. The pledge ceremony will be held in the next spire. Inori cursed at the mention of a ceremony. He held her arm as they walked up the stairs, wondering if they could make it in time. Canna said she appreciates his prompt decision, but they can send him back 1 month from now. So, he could put more thought into this if he wanted, and shyly said she had to prepare her heart as well. Inori refused, saying there was no need for that since he'd already decided. He wants to exchange vows with her as soon as possible and spend the rest of his life here with her, making Canna blush. He glanced at her. He planned to hold this pure-hearted girl and take her with him. But right when he was saying that, a magic circle appeared beneath him. He apologized and let go of her hand. He was enveloped with light as he told her the time was up. It was a short time, but it was fun. Canna looked at him in confusion and couldn't believe he had disappeared. The goddess grinned and welcomed Inori back, saying it was too bad since he almost got himself a princess. However, he couldn't care less about that. He lay on the ground, turning away from her. She watched him and thought he was sulking. Even so, he strays further away from being human whenever he comes. She spoke, telling Inori it might be strange coming from her who gave him those abilities, but he now had multiple of them where he could say he was in a cheat state. Inori sighed at his abilities piling up. He called out his status window and read his gifts. There were more than he expected. There were improved growth rate, 5 times gained experience points, halved required experience points, magic eye of vision, magic eye of formation, hatred of the sun god, vampire, baron class authority, and skill plunder. Demonization and magic eyes, and each of them is different. This would make him stand out. He wondered what to do and if he should start wearing an eye patch. He read skill plunder, so there were skills as well. Or rather, this wears him out mentally. It's so bad that it makes him want to spend his life watching the goddess. He flinched when he noticed something. He looked at the goddess and wondered if she had changed her clothes. The goddess looked back at her and told him she had changed earlier. Inori was surprised and wondered if he said it out loud. The goddess answered that he did. She explained that because he said he'd prefer it if she wore something less revealing earlier. Inori asked if she had also heard his compliments for her then. She wondered if it was embarrassing, and he said no since that was his honest thought. The goddess twirled around and complimented him before asking if her new clothes looked good on her. He gave her a thumbs up, and the goddess smugly smiled. She opened her eyes and said that was enough joking. Since there was not much time, she summarized it. She'll tell Inori her thoughts about this abnormal situation. She explained that summoning basically means choosing someone with a strong soul since the strength of his soul is needed to cross over between worlds. He asked why he was the only one chosen over and over. A bright light enveloped him again, and a magic circle appeared beneath him. Before leaving, the goddess explained that he had a very powerful soul that could be classified as rare. The place was filled with books lying around. It was a complete mess. And so, Inori was summoned for the 5th time. A woman from a distance was panting with her hands stretched out. He observed her, wondering why this time summoners seemed to be exhausted. She panted, thankful she made it in time, and proudly introduced herself. She is Sheena, the best dark wizard in the world, and she summoned him to inherit her magic. Inori sighed as he listened to her. She explained that the people of the world shun dark magic, but she sees a hope to save the world within it. After giving it her all for the past 200 years, she finally reached the pinnacle of this magic. However, because of that, she didn't have much time left. So, she begged him to save this world with this dark magic in her place. Inori smirked and refused. Sheena was dumbfounded as she watched him roll over. Inori informed her that, to put it simply, that was this time's cheat. She asked what he was talking about before realizing it was natural that he refused since he was suddenly summoned. Even if she one-sidedly asked her, there was no way, but there would be no other chance for her. Struggling, she told him that if he agreed to inherit her magic, he could do whatever he wanted with her body. Even if there's not much time left, the body itself is still young, and she hasn't had her first. Inori waved his hand and said it was a very interesting offer, but it was impossible. The baffled Sheena asked why, and Inori pointed to the light enveloping him, saying he'd be gone soon. Sheena's eyes widened when she realized that Inori had disappeared. At the starting point, the goddess looked at him while holding a book. She pitied Sheena. That world is more or less under her jurisdiction, so she knew a little about that girl. She glanced at Inori, saying she was sure that Sheena regretted spending the last bit of her life summoning him. Inori was curious if he was perhaps being blamed. He waved his hand and said Sheena could just do the summoning again. The goddess sighed and explained that another world summoning isn't something that can be done easily. She forcibly exchanged her remaining life into magic power to do that summoning, so it was impossible even if it killed her. Inori started sweating before saying it was her fault for summoning a failure like him. He did nothing wrong and turned away. The goddess thought he was sulking again. She sighed and continued talking. Sheena was truly unfortunate. If only she had delayed the summoning just by one day. The thing called a twist of fate is surely frightening. Just then, Inori was once again enveloped by a bright light. If they were talking about fate, Inori was also a victim. Demons cheered when Inori appeared on top of the altar. They exclaimed that the demon lord had revived and returned from hell. Inori was surprised. At last, he was summoned as a demon lord. A demon, whose name seemed to be Malu, walked closer to Inori, presenting the magnificent figure of the demon lord that didn't seem to be affected by anything. However, Inori was just lying down because it was a hassle. Malu called out to him, asking what kind of weapon he would make this time. Inori was confused that he had a weapon crafting system even though he was a demon lord. He decided to go to the next one. The goddess observed Inori, who came back. He had an improved growth rate, 5 times gained experience points, halved required experience points, magic eye of vision, magic eye of formation, skill plunder, weapon craft, hatred of the sun god, vampire, baron class authority, and true dark magic. Those were all the gifts he had received. The goddess sighed and told him he had gotten so many cheats that it was almost disgusting. She asked what he did because it looked like he could be either a hero or a demon lord. He clutched his hand before opening it back open and laughing. He was actually summoned both as a hero and a demon lord. The goddess sighed and asked Inori to come. Since the next time will be his last summon, she'll put the cheats he accumulated in order. A light glowed when the goddess placed her hand above his head. She bid him farewell, saying it had been quite a while since she had a long conversation with a human. It was fun. A bright light enveloped Inori as he told the goddess he also had fun. Inori appeared in front of a castle gate. The people there looked at him in surprise. Next to him were 3 people who seemed to be high schoolers and 3 women who seemed to be warriors of this world. The king who was standing in front was confused. There were supposed to be only 3 heroes. Inori was speechless and later shouted that he got caught up in another summoning at the very last. After explaining the situation, the woman told them to be grateful, as she now understood the situation. Those 3 high schoolers are summoned heroes, and Inori is just an ordinary person caught in the summoning ritual. The girl exclaimed that they had better be grateful, for she was the one who summoned them, the first princess of the Rising Sun Kingdom. Again, she told them to be grateful and kneel before her. Inori was tired of it, wondering how many times they should be grateful. The first princess announced that there was only one thing that they wished for them. That is to become a counterforce against the demon lord and his army. Inori seemed to have expected that and continued listening. The first princess explained that this world has humans, demi-humans, and demons. The demons formed a country with the demon lord on top, invading their human territory. Because of that, the leader of the League of Nations, the Mikard Empire, called upon each country to summon heroes, praise the heroes in each country, and create an army of heroes. Inori wondered if they do quantity over quality with heroes. The first princess asked if they understood and said they better grow up as heroes who will not bring shame to their country. And then, they received their blessings as heroes. Shinzaki Ryudo, blessing. Limit Break. Karasawa Tamaki, blessing. Magic Affinity. Isegai Aoi, blessing. Barrier Arts. And Takafuji Inori, blessing. Detection. Inori thought about his blessing and wondered why he felt he was being ostracized when the people around him whispered about his blessing. From the results of the physical ability and magical power tests, Ryudo showed his monstrous physical ability, while Aoi and Tamaki got extraordinary results in the magic test. As for Inori, he was completely wiped out. His physical ability is below average, and his magical power is almost 0. And at night, each of them was given a room in the royal castle. He sat on his bed and called for the status window. He smirked when a lot of it came out. He noticed the hatred of the sun god and its description that daytime status is reduced by 90% and restricted skill usage. That was the reason why the results of the physical test were bad. Still, it's strange that his magical power came out to 0. He decided to just forget about it and check the other things instead. It looks like the experience points multiplier from the improved growth rate also applies to skills. The contents of Skill Plunder have changed a little. It has a blood-sucking condition added to work alongside it, and it is possible to steal abilities through blood-sucking even in a world without the concept of skills. The goddess adjusted them at that time. And lastly, Detection. It sounds like a lame ability as a hero's blessing, but in fact, this ability is useful. He used Detection on a wall. He can grasp the signs of people and living things, even on the other side of a thick wall. Inori found a maid carrying a basket of clothes. This cheat ability, Magic Eye of Vision, allows him to see anything as long as he can recognize it. He can even see through the walls. He stopped when he saw through the maid's uniform. That was too much. Anyway, with this, he can see through and appraise anything. He appraised the maid, and her status window appeared. Her name was Nada, a human. And the other thing that piqued his interest was weapon craft. He took a candelabrum and tried the skill without making a noise. And so, the first day has passed. On the second day, an armored woman knight stood before them. She's in charge of their physical training. She is Igiana Is, the knight captain of the Rising Sun Kingdom. They can call her Igiana, Izzy, or Captain. She told them to feel free to call her whichever they liked. So, the captain of this country is a woman, Inori thought. Igiana announced the start of their training. Ryuto, Tamaki, and Aoi will get guidance from the Valkyrie Corps while Inori trains with her. Inori was sweating as he did push-ups. He was internally complaining about why he was the only one doing muscle training. Igiana told him he had to do a thorough basic training first. He agreed, although he found it tough. He decided to wait for an opening and run away. She glared at him, saying it looked like she had to observe his training personally. There was no way he could run away from the knight captain. He collapsed on the ground while the knight captain, Igiana, asked what was with his pathetic state. He only did that 30 times, and he's already like that. The two women summoned with him looked at him like he was pathetic. Inori asked to be given a break. He didn't get enough sleep because he tried a bunch of things last night. On top of that, there was the scorching sunlight. He groaned, internally telling his captain that he was actually a vampire. Suddenly, someone appeared and called their attention. Igiana turned to look at the person. It was the first princess. She asked if there was something the first princess needed in this kind of place. The first princess answered that she had come to see the training, so they had better be grateful. In that case, Igiana told her to sit on the bench. Inori wondered if it was the first princess' quirky habit that she always says be grateful. Now that he thought about it, they had a lecture directly from the princess after the training. For the time being, he decided to appraise her. Her status window appeared, and it showed that she was the first princess, a human. Her blessing was witch's blood. Her titles were Princess of the Rising Sun Kingdom and those who collect gratitudes. Inori wondered what those who collect gratitude meant. Then, he appraised the other princess. Her status window appeared, saying she was the second princess, a human. Her blessings are wit's blood and genius. Her titles are Princess of the Rising Sun Kingdom, Princess of Calamity, and Puppet Princess. Both of them have princess displayed instead of their names. He thought that maybe their names were actually princess. And there's another odd thing. The second princess meant that she was the little sister. But no matter how one looks at her, she doesn't look younger at all. The afternoon came, and it was time for the fun lecture. The second princess bowed and greeted him. She was in charge of lectures and magic training. Inori was the only one who got a separate classroom. The reason is that the first princess thought it outrageous for her to teach those who are not heroes. He cursed at her and planned to bully her someday. Inori greeted the second princess back, and the class started. She started to explain about the kingdom. The Rising Sun Kingdom is a country established by a wizard who was a member of the Heroes Party who once defeated the former Demon Lord. Since the founder of the country was a woman, a culture called witch faith has taken root. It is essential how deeply one has inherited the witch's blood. Therefore, the right to inherit the throne always lies amongst women. Its special products are materials from monsters such as Quetzal. Magic tools are also famous as this country's specialty. The second princess paused the lecture and woke Inori, who fell asleep while holding a book. She asked if he was listening, and he answered he did to some extent. In other words, this is a country where women have been dominant for generations. It is now understandable why the knight captain is a woman and why there is a Valkyrie Corps. The second princess asked if he had any questions, and he asked what a magic tool was. The princess answered that it was a tool that utilized the magical power of its user. Inori spun the pen, thinking that this was a world where magic technology had developed. He guesses that the pen he is holding is also a magic tool. He can write smoothly without ink with it. She asked if he had any other questions. Inori thought for a while before asking for her name. The second princess answered that she had no name. If she had to say so, her name was the second princess. She explained that when a daughter of the royal family has the right to inherit the throne, the name they had up until that point will be stripped. He imagined how her conversation with the first princess would go and thought it'd be chaotic. After dozing off several more times, the class finally ended. The second princess never got angry, even at a lackadaisical student like him. She just keeps on smiling without a speck of change in her expression, much different from that cheeky princess. She's the figure of a real princess, but he feels something odd from her. When night came, Inori's fangs showed. It is the only time he's freed from the hatred of the sun god. He uses this time to try and grasp his abilities, and he learned one thing tonight. Magic Eye of Formation is said to allow him to save and use the magic circle he sees. But it seems it only recognizes magic circles from the world from which he got the eye. He rang the bell, and the maid, Nada, entered his room. She asked if there was anything she could do for him. Inori asked her to get him a pen and some paper, and also asked what color her underwear was right now. She answered it was black. Inori observed her. It seems that she does get hypnotized. Advanced mental interference magic, it's the magic that was cast on him at that Dr. Creepy's place. Normally, there was no way he could memorize the magic circle in such an instant. But his magic eye of vision has photographic memory ability. It memorizes everything vividly. And there's another magic circle he saw in that world. It's much more huge and complicated than the mental interference magic. Of course, he also remembered it vividly, the summoning magic circle. Supposedly, the magic eye of formation can only save one magic circle at a time. However, by drawing the magic circles by memory using the magic eye of vision on papers like this, he can swap the two magics at any time. It was great. He decided to overwrite the magic eye of formation immediately. It's a combination of the two magic eyes. He activated Magic Eye of Vision's Farsight and Magic Eye of Formation's Summon Magic. He was able to see a magic circle and use it. He teleported near the wall. The transfer was a success, and he can now go out freely. His black wings slowly started to come out. Nothing was holding him back. Just then, a giant bird appeared. He appraised it, showing it had no name, but it was a bird-type monster, Quetzal. It had 765 health points, 132 mana points, 778 strength, 593 vitality, 376 dexterity, 1087 agility, and 42 intelligence. It had no blessing or title. The Quetzal started to close in. Inori concluded that the monster looked pretty strong because its status was pretty high. It screeched. It looked dangerous. The Quetzal attacked him with its mouth. Thankfully, he was able to dodge its sharp teeth. If he remembers correctly, Quetzal is one of this country's special products. He wondered if the people in this country go and hunt something like this. Back in the castle, Igiana was walking through the hallway when she bumped into the second princess. Igina asked what the matter was and advised to refrain from going around without an escort at night, even if it was still within the castle. The princess said she wanted to talk to her. She told her that today, Inori asked her what a magic tool was and asked Igiana if she had yet to explain it during their training. Igiana answered yes, saying she had the 3 heroes do weapon training. And for Inori, she had him do basic strength training. The second princess responded that only a few can fight monsters with their own magic and physique. Setting the heroes aside, Inori is just an ordinary person who got dragged into this. Forget about fighting the demon lord. Without any magic equipment, even fighting a normal monster would be dangerous. If they don't give him any means of fighting, something terrible might happen at this rate. As soon as Inori left the castle, he had to fight a Quetzal. The bird-type monster tried to eat him, but he activated his true dark magic, Shadow Walk, before it could. He was able to get away, and the monster looked around to find him. Inori grabbed a brick, which started to float when he activated domination. True dark magic. This magic is super convenient and interesting. It allows him to dive into the shadows and control objects with the power of dark magic, and he can manipulate them at will, too. However, substances that can be controlled are limited to non-living organisms. There's also another limitation that he can't attack directly with the manipulated substances. That means he should just figure out some workaround. He threw the bricks he manipulated toward the Quetzal, who ran away. However, the bricks continued to follow. Domination, remotely controlled. And then, the Quetzal was hit with multiple bricks, injuring it. He just used domination to track the enemy down with projectiles. However, even after he stopped using domination, the projectiles would still be carrying a great amount of momentum as they hit the enemy. That's how he delivered the attack. Back in the castle, Igiana said that one can certainly become stronger with the help of magical tools. However, that strength is just something borrowed from those tools. Relying on power other than on one's own strength from the very beginning can make them grow dependent on it. She bowed and explained that what they need now is to prevent that and build up their own strength. That is what she thought. The second princess said she understood and apologized. Even though it's the training menu that Igiana, the one who bears the title of the mankind's strongest, came up with, she seemed to be worried for nothing. After that, she excused herself. Igiana called out to her, saying she no longer smiled like she used to. The second princess smiled and replied that she intends to keep smiling even now. Igiana asked her what she thought of the first princess. She asked why Igiana would ask such an obvious thing. The first princess is talented, popular, rational, and a wonderful person suitable for the throne. Igiana asked if it was her true feelings. The second princess turned and asked what she meant by that. They never know where someone might be listening. If she speaks ill of the first princess, she'll be charged for blasphemy. Igiana agreed and thought for a while before speaking again. Blasphemy towards the first princess and no telling who might be listening. She doesn't need to worry about both. She showed the hallway, saying there was no such person. The second princess, Leah, had looked towards Igiana. Meanwhile, Inori watched the moon as he threw up blood after defeating the Quetzal. Inori lay on the ground, staring at the sun, wondering if he'd just gotten lost in this world. He started feeling this way ever since about 2 weeks after he was summoned here. The others were dueling while Inori lay on the ground. The first reason is he's been completely treated as an extra to the other 3. The second reason is this country, the Rising Sun Kingdom, summed up in one sentence, they're financially dangerous. Basically, it's dirt poor. Even the reason for summoning them was likely because they were aiming for the reward from the League of Nations. Lastly, even if he falls asleep during class, the second princess's expression is the same as ever. The second princess, the one in charge of his class, doesn't show any emotions. She is the puppet princess. She's the most boring heroine compared to the ones from the previous worlds. After the lessons, he got back to his room and thought he was screwed after getting caught up in the summoning of this poor country. On top of that, the princess is just like a puppet. Suddenly, there was a knock on his door. It was time. He opened the door and greeted the maid, Nara. He wore the eye patch he requested, while Nara asked what he thought of the size, and Inori responded that it was perfect. He asked for it because having an odd golden eye draws too much attention, and he thanked Nara after. Nara, who was fixing the laundry basket, spoke. She said she heard that Inori had a separate class from the other heroes and asked how Aaliyah's lectures were and if they were easy to understand. Inori tilted his head in confusion, and Nara immediately covered her mouth. She meant to say the second princess lectures. Inori recalled the name Nara said. It was Aaliyah. He wondered if that was the second princess name before it was stripped. That was news to him. Nara flinched, and Inori smirked, sitting on the bench. He had used advanced mental interference magic on her. It piqued his interest, so he decided to ask a little more about it. This country, the Rising Sun Kingdom, is a nation centered on its queen. For generations, the daughters of the queen would inherit the throne. However, the current queen, who hadn't been blessed with a child for many years, feared the royal blood would fade. So, 19 years ago, she had the king take a concubine to give birth to a daughter, and then a girl named Aaliyah was born. It means the one that succeeds the throne. In a word, she was a genius. Although her magical power was inferior, she absorbed everything she was taught. Living up to her given name, she tried her best to succeed the throne, at least until 7 years after she was born. Until the current queen gave birth to her real daughter, Amanda. Inori thought it was a simple yet ruthless story. From that moment on, she was no longer the first princess. It was as if she wasn't needed anymore. All of her efforts until then were also attributed to nothing. Even her epithet, the one that succeeds the throne, the very meaning of the name she was born with, was also robbed from her. It's just like a story of a tragic princess. Both this country's and her future are hopeless. She was the puppet princess who had lost her emotions. It would be great if a prince on a white horse came to the rescue. He's not doing it, though. He wanted to be spared from eloping with a boring puppet princess. Once again, Inori fell asleep, so Aaliyah had to wake him up. Inori got up and greeted her with a good morning, making Aaliyah sigh. Inori noticed she let out a sigh today. Even if he doesn't listen to the lecture, his photographic memory will instantly memorize everything on the board, so he has nothing to worry about. Besides, she won't get angry no matter what. She's a puppet princess, after all. It doesn't matter if he slept or woke up. She won't get angry, was what he wanted to say, but Aaliyah's sigh cut off his thoughts. Inori noticed that she sighed again. What's more, this time, she blatantly did it. Aaliyah stated 27 times and asked if Inori had any idea what she was referring to. It's the number of times she had woken him up so far. She pointed to him and told him she thought he should put in more effort. Inori was surprised and wondered what had happened to the puppet princess. Aaliyah asked if he'd realized it himself, and Inori thought it was rare for her to scold him. She said that even though he was a hero, the people naturally saw him as a weakling. They even ridiculed his current situation. He was not bound by anything yet. It depends on his effort, but he's acting like this despite that. Inori grinned and told her he wasn't the same as the other 3 actual heroes, nor was he the same as a genius like her. He slammed the book, saying he may look like he's slacking. Nonetheless, he's still trying his best. Aaliyah understood and smiled, telling him they'd changed their schedule slightly. He'll be having a special class today. They went to another building. Inori looked up, wondering about the special class. Once they got inside, Inori looked up at the glass ceiling. So this was the special magic training room. Aaliyah closed the door while Inori looked around the room. He found it amazing that there was a rich amount of magic throughout the room. Aaliyah touched the wall, informing him that the walls of this room are highly soundproofed and the glass on the ceiling is also special, so no one would be able to tell what happened here from the outside. As an example, she breathed in and let out a shout, making Inori flinch. He was confused, and Aaliyah said no one would rush in, even if he made such a loud noise. She turned to Inori, staring at him. Inori was confused by the situation while Aaliyah walked towards him. She thought she was generous enough, trying to be kind to him, yet he, far from being motivated, just dawdled around. But that's fine since she'll be changing her approach. She assured Inori that she was not threatening him. However, at this rate, he will be banished from the castle. They have no obligation to keep supporting someone incompetent who's not making any effort. That is what Her Majesty says. Inori stepped back. That was news to him. Aaliyah smiled at him, explaining that he'd die if he were thrown out in his current state. She stepped forward, kicking Inori's side and removing his eye patch. Inori's eyes widened as he looked to the side, shivering. He couldn't believe what was happening. Was she for real? He wondered why she brought him into a completely soundproof room, but to think it was a sudden iron fist coaching. This is just like those kinds of situations where a senior would call others to the back of the school building. Aaliyah stepped forward to kick Inori and continued, saying before that happened to Inori, it was time for drastic measures. Inori dodged and thought that she was anything but a puppet princess. Inori fell to the ground, and Aaliyah asked if it wasn't pathetic. Despite being summoned as a hero, he can only run around with a princess as his opponent. Inori internally disagreed. If he retaliates, that's kinda bad in a different way. But if he didn't have cheats, he might lose naturally. Aaliyah stated that it was also the same when she borrowed this room. At first, they opposed her going here with him unescorted, but they were convinced she could do something with her own strength. Her words stabbed Inori like a knife. So, his uselessness was already a well-known thing. She asked if he was fine with that, even though he could put in as much effort as he could, even though he wasn't shackled like her. Inori flinched before finally getting it. What she's so indignant about, and what agitates her emotions like this, there was no such thing. Aaliyah gathered magic for an attack, asking if he was doing his best like he said. He, who is just a pleb, shouldn't push his luck. A pleb should strive to live the uncouth life he's been given, even if he had to crawl on the ground. She attacked him with her magic, and Inori dodged, smirking. From the beginning, Aaliyah has always vented her emotions and resentment against herself through him. Aaliyah jumped to kick Inori. However, Inori started to laugh before disappearing into thin air and reappearing behind her. She turned to him and flinched when he kept laughing. She was confused as Inori crouched down, laughing. He had activated true dark magic, Shadow Walk. Aaliyah asked what he did, but he responded that it was a secret. Inori smirked, thinking it wasn't important. He got up and noticed that Aaliyah seemed quite surprised. He explained that he was just playing around and nothing serious had been done. He now sees what makes her angry whenever she sees him. He now sees what she is jealous of. He started clapping. No emotions? A puppet princess? He laughed, exclaiming that it was a masterpiece. Seeing that Inori didn't stop laughing, Aaliyah asked what he was laughing at because it was so creepy. Inori kept laughing, his fangs starting to show, and he applauded her unwavering, strong spirit. He walked closer to her, grabbing her. He found it intriguing the second princess of the Rising Sun Kingdom. No, Aaliyah. She was surprised and asked how he knew that name. She warned him to get away from him, or she'd call the guards. However, Inori cut her off, asking how since this room was completely soundproof. In all honesty, among the girls that he'd seen in his previous summonings, Aaliyah seemed to be the most boring. But now she's by far the best girl. Hearing him say that made her flinch and blush. She asked him what he just said out of nowhere, but Inori ignored her and continued to say she was a good girl. She'd been abandoned, despised, and thrown into despair, yet her envy was still going strong, even towards a useless pleb like him. She shouted for Inori not to make fun of him. Inori admired her character, an indomitable spirit that does not give in to malice, one that doesn't seem to have any regrets or adherence. But no matter how many roles of a doll she played, something was smoldering within her heart all this time. Honestly, he was quite disappointed. He didn't think she was such a strong person. Aaliyah responded that she wasn't strong. She wanted to be strong, and that's why she didn't want him, who still had a chance to do so, to be broken as well. Inori understood and said she could rest assured. He would probably keep falling asleep in the future, but he's also more obsessed with himself than anyone else just like her. Aaliyah's eyes widened when he saw the darkness surrounding Inori, who was walking away. She gasped as she watched the darkness disappear as Inori picked up his eye patch. After a while, Aaliyah finally spoke. It seemed that what she did was nothing but unnecessary meddling. However, she asked him not to sleep during class if possible because having classes alone is quite lonely. Inori sighed, and night came. The special class is over, and he's sure beyond that door, she'll return to be the puppet princess again. What a shame. But it won't hurt if he teases her a little more. Once Aaliyah opened the door, they heard what was happening outside. Someone shouted that an enemy was attacking, causing both of them to flinch. In the hallway, guards had collapsed to the floor. The castle has been invaded. The guards attacked a long-haired man, shouting for him to stop. The man easily dodged and subdued the guards, telling them to get out of his way. He cut their swords in half, shocking the guards. They thought that was impossible and wondered who the man was. The long-haired man tapped his sword on his shoulder and asked if they were kidding. He had already introduced himself earlier. He is Date Masayoshi, the hero. He had come here to have a duel and asked them to call Takafuji Inori. After hearing his name, they asked what country he came from and threatened him not to think he'd be forgiven for doing something like this. Masayoshi sighed, clearly annoyed. He attacked the guards, shouting for them to shut up. After arriving at the scene, Igiana asked the guard to explain the situation, including who the intruders were and what method they used to infiltrate the castle. She wondered just how many did they allow past them. The guard informed her that there was only one intruder, and his infiltration method was barging right through the front entrance. Igiana flinched and couldn't believe what she just heard from the guard. This just became troublesome, and for it to happen now of all times. After all, today is the day they invite the heroes from other countries for the exchange assembly. The guard sweated and told her it was hard to believe, but the intruder, no, the man called himself a hero. Ryudo, Tamaki, and Aoi reached the hallway and were surprised at the scene before them. Ryudo glanced at Masayoshi, who was walking before them, and questioned if he was the one who took them down. Masayoshi turned to them, surprised. He observed them, and they were wearing modern clothing. He concluded that they must be this country's heroes. There were 2 women and 1 man. So, by process of elimination, that guy must be Takafuji Inori. Masayoshi dashed forward, and Ryudo grabbed the sword beside him to block Masayoshi's attack. Aoi was surprised at Masayoshi's speed, while Tamaki wondered what he was doing. A guard then told them to take care because that man was a hero. Ryudo was having difficulty blocking as Masayoshi smirked, saying he'd come quite far just to see him. So, they should have a duel. Masayoshi continued attacking him as Ryudo continued to block. After clashing with Masayoshi a few times, Ryudo understood his swordsmanship. Masayoshi's swordsmanship had no flashy or wasted movements. It was straightforward and savage. It's sharp and polished. It was a sword technique obsessively focused on defeating the enemy. Ryudo concluded that he was too strong to be called a human. But if he was also a hero, then this power comes from his blessing. He had no idea what kind of blessing it was, but he, too, would use his blessing. He activated his blessing, Limit Break. However, his sword disappeared from his hands before he could fully use his blessing. The others watching were surprised to see him lose so quickly. Masayoshi had hit his sword, causing it to fly up before dashing closer, claiming it was over. Ryudo thought this was bad. However, before Masayoshi could attack him, someone spoke. It was Igiana. Seeing his blade, she asked if he was from the Grant's kingdom. Masayoshi dashed to attack Igiana, but she easily blocked him with her own sword. She glared at him, saying that his mischief had gone a little too far. Masayoshi observed her face and asked who she was. Igiana introduced herself as the Knight Captain of the Rising Sun Kingdom. After hearing that, Masayoshi dashed back. So, she was the captain, no wonder she was on a different level from the others. But no matter who she was, he'd send her flying if she got in his way. Igiana coldly looked at him, saying she might have to give him something of a rough welcome. The 2 dashed forward to attack each other with their swords. Masayoshi jumped up and prepared to attack Igiana, but she prepared an attack of her own, surprising Masayoshi. He quickly blocked her attack. However, he couldn't block everything, and an attack went through, cutting his cheek. Masayoshi retreated, snickering. Igiana turned out to be very strong, so it looks like he's got no choice. Ryudo flinched after feeling Masayoshi's aura completely change. Masayoshi held his sword, saying he'll have to use his blessing for the first time in a while, or things might get tough. The others watched the fight, while Ryudo was surprised that Masayoshi hadn't been using it this whole time. Ijiana asked if Masayoshi would still not lower his sword. Then, from this point on, she would also cease holding back. Masayoshi responded that he wouldn't lower his sword because he still hadn't reached his goal. Ijiana asked about his goal, and Masayoshi answered that his goal was to defeat Takafuji Inori. Ijiana was dumbfounded and asked why he was fighting with Ryudo if his goal was Inori. While activating his blessing, Sword Arts, he asked who Ryudo was. However, he suddenly flinched after feeling pressure behind him. He quickly turned around to see who was behind him. Inori stood on the second floor, watching the fight. Masayoshi asked who he was and wondered if he had just imagined it. Inori was confused and noticed Masayoshi had suddenly looked over there. However, he seriously wondered what was going on. He observed the beat-up soldiers, the frantically apologizing higher-ups from the neighboring country, and Ryudo, whom he wondered if he had a harem going on over there because he had both Tamaki and Aoi tending to him. And lastly, Masayoshi. After coming down with Aaliyah, Masayoshi explained that he had been looking for Takafuji Inori. Inori responded that he was certainly Takafuji Inori, but asked who he was. The others were surprised, and Aaliyah asked if he wasn't his acquaintance. Inori had no acquaintances who would come to a castle to look for him. Looking at his status, the long-haired man was Date Masayoshi. He wondered what was with his name, which was written with the characters for justice. He wondered if it was a cliché or a gleaming, noble name. He joked, saying rubies are certainly justice, but there was a scent of hypocrisy wafting off him. He's one of those types. It'll be annoying to get involved with him. Masayoshi called out to Inori, challenging him to a duel. Inori's eyes widened at the sudden challenge. Masayoshi came closer to him, saying he'd prove that someone like him was unworthy of the goddess. Inori was confused at the mention of the goddess and started to remember her. A clear, white space that stretches into infinity. A refined space, surpassing all human knowledge. In that space dwells a single, beautiful guide to other worlds. Yes, that is her, the goddess of transmigration. She removed her sunglasses after noticing a magic circle. It's been a while since they had a summoning. She quickly changed her clothes and changed the setting with a flick of a finger. Or so she says, but this should just be a normal summoning. That boy, Inori's summoning was simply way too atypical. She welcomed the person who had come and introduced herself and the place they were in. The person who was kneeling started to speak. The goddess looked at him, waiting for his following words. The man looked up at the goddess and asked her to marry him. It was a reflexive response that came out automatically. The man whom she rejected, Date Masayoshi, was thereafter summoned to the same world as Inori. And so, they arrive at the current scene. Masayoshi explained the story of how he met the goddess, and Inori, who was listening, was still confused. All he got from that explanation was that the goddess rejected him. He wondered why Masayoshi proposed all of a sudden, and if there was something wrong with him before concluding it really was no good. He really shouldn't get involved with him. Masayoshi told him to hear him out until the end and continued his story. Masayoshi begged, asking if it was really no good, although he sort of knew that already. The goddess apologized and said she was happy he felt that way, but she was a goddess. He knew it. He asked if there was another man in her heart. The goddess was confused, and Masayoshi exclaimed that she should at least give him a reason. The goddess was confused and thought of a reason before finally coming up with one. She explained that in the past, there was another boy summoned, like him. His name was Takafuji Inori, and she fell for him at first sight, which is a major lie. She continued, saying that if his soul becomes stronger than Inori's, she might consider him. That was what she said. Inori got it now. That goddess shoved the nuisance off onto him, and he thought of punching her the next time he saw her. Now, he wondered what she should do about this situation. Masayoshi said they should be done talking and activated his blessing. With Inori, he's going to use his blessing right from the start and get serious about beating him into the ground. Inori found it truly annoying. Ryudo blocked Inori and told him not to let Masayoshi provoke him. He most likely had a powerful blessing, and there was a possibility that Inori could get seriously injured. Of course, Inori won't. That's obvious. Masayoshi was the monster who went toe-to-toe with the captain. But in this situation, it's not like he can't make use of these circumstances. He remembered Aaliyah's words from earlier and turned to Masayoshi, accepting his duel, although he was still unsure what was going on. The others were concerned, while Masayoshi just smirked. Tamaki told Inori to rethink this because he's going to get himself killed, and Aoi shouted that he couldn't even get past 30 push-ups. Inori wondered what was wrong with 30 while Masayoshi scoffed, asking if he thought he was that resourceful. He was preparing for an attack when Inori suddenly spoke, asking how they should conduct this duel. Masayoshi was confused and answered that they were, of course, going to fight right here. Inori gave an example, like a man with a gun fighting someone unarmed. He asked if they could really call something like that a duel. Masayoshi asked what he was getting at, and Inori responded that his blessing was detection. Unlike his blessing, Sword Arts, his was certainly not a battle-oriented blessing. He smirked and continued that if Masayoshi intended to beat down a disadvantaged opponent one-sidedly, then there was nothing he could do. Masayoshi was enraged and told Inori not to mess with him, asking who would do such an unfair thing. The people watching realized that Inori had manipulated him, and he took the bait. Inori liked guys like their total simpletons. Date Masayoshi's blessing is Sword Arts. In comparison, Takafuji Inori's blessings are detection, magic eye of vision, magic eye of formation, true dark magic, blood-sucking, skill acquisition, improved growth rate, etc. Masayoshi asked how he thought they should conduct the duel, and Inori thought about it. The next day, they entered a dungeon, which Inori had suggested. He had his eyes on this place during his nighttime wanderings. According to the captain, the levels closer to the surface are used as training grounds for the knights. The condition to win is to defeat the first floor boss. With this, his exploration-oriented blessing and Masayoshi's battle-oriented blessing should be evenly matched. Masayoshi agreed, and Inori explained that just in case, they'd set a time limit to the opening of the exchange assembly being held the day after tomorrow. He was about to explain more. However, Masayoshi had already rushed in. He scratched his head, telling Masayoshi to go ahead and give it his all. Inori walked around the dungeon, seeming to know where he was going. With the detection blessing, he couldn't get lost, and he could also proceed while largely avoiding any encounters with monsters. However, there is one point of concern to watch out for. It looked like someone was tailing him. He tapped his foot on the ground to make it look like he continued walking, and the person tailing him peeked from behind the wall and was soon confused at the dead end. The person walked over to the wall. There was no way she lost sight of him. Just as she wondered how Inori disappeared, he emerged from the wall behind her. It seems he used true dark magic to hide himself. He spoke, making the person tailing him flinch and look back. He wondered who was following him and asked what she was doing in a place like this before grabbing her hood to show her face. It was Aaliyah. She was surprised to see Inori and asked how he got behind her. Inori lied, saying there was a hidden passageway. More importantly, for her to be sneaking around, almost like a thief. Aaliyah blushed and explained she was a bit worried, so she secretly thought of seeing how he was doing. Inori asked if she had even prepared an outfit, and Aaliyah responded that Nara had given her a full-fledged look when she asked her for something. Now that he thought about it, Nara is part of the small second princess faction. He told her it certainly looked good on her, and Aaliyah asked him not to tease her. Well, it's true she can't enter the dungeon in one of her usual dresses. He could have equipped her with something using weapon craft if she had asked him. But he realized he couldn't say anything because he was just wearing a button-up and couldn't exactly call that exploration equipment. There was one thing he forgot to mention. In this dungeon, there is no concept of day or night. There is no morning, and there is no afternoon. In other words, he's currently been released from the hatred of the sun god. He's in his unlimited, cheat-filled, full power status. Inori mumbled that he'd also have a change of clothes, confusing Aaliyah. She asked where he was going by himself and told him not to leave her behind. She was about to call him again when Inori's shirt was thrown to the floor. She looked at it confusedly before flinching when he saw more of his clothes being thrown. She asked if he was joking and was about to call him again when his undergarment was thrown in front of her. Aaliyah blushed and called out Inori's name, imagining him without clothes. Suddenly, Inori appeared, asking if she called. But Aaliyah screamed after seeing him. Inori complained about her being loud and asked what seemed to be the problem. Aaliyah, who was covering her eyes, peeked to look at him and noticed he had clothes on. He was now wearing a robe. He told her not to act so surprised. He just put on some equipment he found and picked up with detection. That was totally a lie, though. He just made this with weapon craft. He used the level he gradually raised since coming to this country and material from the monsters he'd hunted, plus the materials he'd accumulated since entering this dungeon, to make it. It was a jet black robe he created and equipped the full set. Inori also invested it with black magic, so the name was uncomfortably Chunobu-like, but this will do. Aaliyah kicked Inori, asking what he meant by, this would do. Inori fell to the floor while Aaliyah nagged him, asking what sort of person suddenly undresses in front of a woman. She reminded him that she was a princess and would have him punished for treason. Inori looked back at her and told her that her kick had gained some power with her not wearing a skirt. Aaliyah was frustrated and asked if he wasn't reflecting at all. Just then, Inori flinched when a monster with countless eyes appeared behind Aaliyah. He leaned back, saying that was true. The shadow that started from his hands reached the monster, stabbing it with multiple knives. It was true dark magic combined with the throwing technique, the silver black dagger knife, which Inori created, and black thread, which Inori also created. He pulled the threads, killing the monster. He then told Aaliyah that they should quit joking around because he was in the middle of a duel. Aaliyah turned around when he heard some noise behind her, but the monster had slowly submerged in Inori's shadow. He got up and asked Aaliyah to come with him. He'll show her his way of doing things. A single hero arrives at the place where the boss awaits. The boss growled, and Masayoshi smirked, jumping to attack it. In the blink of an eye, Masayoshi's sword cut the boss in half. The duel was settled, and the winner was Date Masayoshi. Masayoshi clicked his tongue, thinking it was a letdown. He wondered what Inori was trying to do. Back in the castle, Nara welcomes Aaliyah back. However, she is soon shocked by her state. Aaliyah informs her that her voice is too loud, and she apologizes. Aaliyah asks her to prepare a bath, and Nara quickly walks away to do so. After the bath was prepared, Nara helped Aaliyah remove her dirty robe and asked her what had happened in the dungeon and where Inori was. Aaliyah answered that Inori was now probably at Her Majesty, the Queen's side. Inori kneeled before the Queen while the Queen glared at him. She said he must be Inori, and Inori answered in the affirmative. The Queen asked him what he meant by failing the duel with a hero from another country, and that he lost with a great difference in time. Inori agreed and said there was no room for excuses. The Queen talked in a voice that reeks of a granny. Well, it is as she says. Inori, in the duel this time, had suffered utter defeat. After all, let alone defeat the boss, he did not even reach the place where the boss was. His thoughts were cut off when the Queen shouted that she had overlooked his uselessness and laziness up until now. However, he had finally brought harm to their country. There was no meaning in feeding the useless, so he shall be expelled from this castle. She asked if he didn't have any objections, and the rest didn't dare speak. Except Inori. He had an objection. The Queen's face grew angrier, and she couldn't believe he had objected. However, Inori pointed out that she said harm and asked what is the harm to the kingdom she speaks of. The queen was confused and answered it was losing the duel. Inori admitted that he lost the duel, but that was all. He asked if she was aware of the bet that had been placed in the duel, and she answered that she had not heard about it. Inori explained that the thing that was wagered in the duel was reliability. The queen was confused, so Inori continued to explain. The person who wins the duel this time will, to a certain female, become a male worthy of her. That was the condition. The queen was baffled and asked if that was all. The smiling Inori answered that yes, it was. Duels are a custom from the past. If a bet were placed beforehand, the duel would have absolute authority. Just that in the duel this time, there is no such thing. That's right. The loss, this time, has not brought any harm to the kingdom. Inori smirked, saying it wasn't like he didn't do anything to the dungeon. He turned to Igiana, and she nodded at him before ordering a guard to bring a bag to the queen. Inori continued, saying he thought he should at least prepare souvenirs if he didn't win, and told them to go ahead and open and look at what was inside. The queen and the first princess peeked at the open bag and were met with shining treasures. A few hours ago, inside the dungeon, Aaliyah asked if abandoning the duel for something like treasure hunting was really right. Inori packed the treasures and said that it was fine. The captain, Igiana, also knew of this matter. Duel. What stupidity. He questioned what he'd gained from fighting that monster in the first place. From the start, his aim was this dungeon, or rather, the treasures here. He said to let the dog chomp down on the tasteless victory. She would see the path by setting aside her shame, pleasantries, and humaneness. If the right path fails, take the evil path. Even if one had to start again, the evil path would do. Inori will do anything for his own sake. Aaliyah sighed at his words. Suddenly, they heard a loud growl. They flinched with surprise, and Inori wondered if it was the boss and told her they should end it there. Inori started to walk away while the treasure chest he left behind caught Aaliyah's eyes. She informed him that there was still one remaining, and Inori told her it was fine and advised her just to leave it alone. Aaliyah refused, thinking it was a waste to do so. She opened the box, saying she'd take it if he didn't need it. However, she couldn't finish her sentence when a monster emerged from the chest and swallowed her. Inori looked back. That was why he told her just to leave it. He sighed and watched the mimic swallow Aaliyah's upper body. Inori commented that this country's royalty reeks of poverty in the weirdest areas. Aaliyah, who was inside the mimic's mouth, asked Inori if he could hear her and asked him to help her since it was disgusting in there. Looking at the mimic's status, it didn't seem to threaten her life, so Inori decided to admire the view a little more. Aaliyah, who was now back at the castle and enjoying her bath, sighed. She thought of what Inori had done, using the duel as an excuse to get the chance to explore the dungeon, and by bringing back the treasure or what he called a souvenir, he proved the usefulness of detection to this country. To think he would use such a method, let alone face criticism for the loss. He even resolved the matter of being expelled. She thought that Inori was much more shrewd and mean than she thought. The royal family rejoiced after seeing the treasures inside the bag, causing Igiana to have a proud expression. The hero, Masayoshi, lay on his bed, confused and frustrated, while Inori walked out of the throne room with a satisfied smile. This was unrelated, but when Inori checked his status after returning to his room, under normal skills, swindling level 1, and under titles, lousy actors, were added. The status showed up, showing his name. Under it were notifications that he had obtained a new skill, swindling level 1, and a new title, lousy actor. He looked at it and thought the status was annoying. Later that evening, the queen announced the beginning of the exchange between their country, the Rising Sun Kingdom, and the heroes they welcomed from the Grants Kingdom. Everybody raised their cups and cheered for the exchange. Although Inori completely forgot about it, this was supposedly about the meeting. The stars are obviously Ryudo and his friends, the heroes of this kingdom, and the two other heroes from Date Masayoshi's side. Also, the irregular hero in a corner, Inori. Inori was grateful, so ever grateful. Originally, the plan was to leave him out of this party. With his existence recognized through Date Masayoshi's intrusion, it seems like he was allowed to attend out of pity for his achievement of finding the treasure. Or rather, it looks like publicly treating him as a hero is not acceptable. It must be because he's an irregular existence that got caught up in this. Speaking of Ryudo and his friends, they have hero-like uniforms prepared for them. They sure shine like handsome males and beautiful females. He was pissed off and thought that normies should just explode. Leaving the jokes aside, since there's this opportunity, he decided to look at the statuses of the heroes from another kingdom. He activated appraisal to appraise the hero with Masayoshi. However, a fat noble suddenly walked by, appearing in Inori's view. He ended up appraising him instead of the hero. He is Stelk-Crest. Inori was frustrated and wondered what was with that wasted bulk. Just then, the hero with Masayoshi approached him. The man with his hair covering his eyes apologized for the incident and the trouble Masayoshi had caused him. He is Tanaka Yuichi. His blessing was note. The woman, who was also a hero from Grant's kingdom, nudged Masayoshi, saying he was the one who was supposed to apologize. She is Ada Hikari. Her blessing was light magic. Masayoshi just clicked his tongue, and Inori flinched after seeing him. There he is, Date Masayoshi. Hikari nagged at Masayoshi, saying he was the one who selfishly made a ruckus and caused trouble to this kingdom. She asked if he couldn't just apologize sincerely, and if he didn't think that what he was doing was lame. Masayoshi rudely told her to shut up, calling her flatty. Hikari exclaimed before stating that having a flat chest was a status. Masayoshi just scoffed at her, making the blushing Hikari mad. He sure laughed scornfully. Alright, it was a Krieg. She stretched, showing her muscles and ready to attack Masayoshi. However, Yuichi stopped her and calmed her down. Inori, who was watching, thought it seemed like the heroes on the other side also had it rough. For now, it was troublesome for Masayoshi to discover him, so it was about time he retreated. Hikari noticed the retreating Inori and recognized him. If she remembers correctly, he is this kingdom's hero who fought with Masayoshi. She asked the other heroes of the Rising Sun Kingdom if Inori was really that strong. Tamaki tilted her head in confusion and answered his stamina test was horrendous. Aoi did the same and said he could only do 30 push-ups. Ryudo called them out as if telling them to stop. Hikari was confused after finding out Inori was a weakling and asked Masayoshi if he had specially come to this kingdom alone in advance to bully the weak. She flinched after Masayoshi turned around with a scowl, asking her to repeat what she had said just now. Hikari screamed, feeling chills. She waved her hands, claiming she was against violence. However, Masayoshi continued to glare at her, telling her not to kid around. He asked if she thought the great Masayoshi would do something as lame as bullying the weak or raising his hand against someone like her. Hiraki ended up crying, and Masayoshi continued to shout at her, telling her not to cry because it would look like he made her cry, which would be lame. But she only ended up crying more. Ryudo turned to Yuyuichi and asked if it had always been like this, and Yuyuichi apologized for the ruckus. He got a little curious, but he noticed earlier that the hero who had fought with Masayoshi, Nori, had one of his eyes covered with an eye patch. He asked if Masayoshi had injured him. Aoi was the one who answered, saying he was wrong. Inori had worn that eye patch even before then, and he didn't wear it especially for any injuries or illnesses. Yuyuichi was confused, thinking he used not fake glasses but a fake eye patch. Tamaki agreed. Now that she thought about it, under that eye patch, the color of that eye was different. Ryudo tried to stop her from saying any more than that. She continued, saying it was probably color contacts or something that could change its color. Yuyuichi started sweating after hearing that there were color contacts under the eye patch. So, it was an odd eye. That was Chunibyu. Furthermore, it was a serious one. Yuyuichi started throwing up blood, and Hikari was surprised to see him puking blood. Aoi denied it, saying it was the juice she was drinking earlier. Tamaki wondered what it was suddenly. No doubt, some of his past scars were dug up by having this conversation. Ryudo silently came to a realization. Inori, who was walking out, internally apologized to Ryudo for leaving Masayoshi and his friends to him. He's finished looking at their blessings and statuses, so he has nothing else to do. That being said, leaving aside Ada Hikari's light magic, Tanaka Yuichi's note was an interesting ability he was somewhat interested in. While walking down the hall, he stumbled upon the first princess eating dessert. There she was, their kingdom's flatty. She looked at him in confusion. She wondered who it was and thought it was just the hero who got caught up in the situation. She had invited him to a party she originally had no plans to invite him to, so he should be grateful. He just bowed, sarcastically thanking her in his mind. Then, he noticed the accessories she was wearing and said he was glad she had taken a liking to the treasures from the other day. She was surprised and stutteringly replied that the greater had worn it, so he should be grateful. Besides, if she were going to get a gift, she would rather receive it from Ryudo. Inori watched in confusion as the first princess looked at Ryudo with a blush. He wondered if they were in that sort of relationship and since when. She turned back to him, telling him to be grateful and enjoy the party for now. He was grateful. It was quite a fancy party for a poor kingdom like this. Indeed, the financial state of this kingdom was pretty bad. That was why the treasures from the other day were highly effective. Considering all that, the nobles have grown fat, and the queen's expensive-looking ornaments are clinking away. Perhaps they are the type who ignore the citizens and indulge in extravagance. Or rather, being a loner at a venue like this was also quite rough, so he wondered what he should do when he suddenly noticed Aaliyah. Inori approached Aaliyah and thought he was saved. Aaliyah turned to him, smiling. He sweated, about to call out her name again, when he noticed her still smiling at him. So, he just addressed her as the second princess. Only then did Aaliyah respond. He understood now. Aaliyah was like that because of the place. She asked what he needed, and he realized this was her stiff puppet mode. It was no use. He couldn't use her. He cursed, feeling like he was getting passed around, and wondered if there was somewhere he could go. Suddenly, a hand grabbed his shoulder, calling out to him. Inori looked back. There he was, date Masayoshi. Masayoshi pointed to himself, telling him to lend him some of his time for a bit. They went to a more secluded corner, and Masayoshi asked what he was trying to do in that duel. Inori was confused, and Masayoshi told him it seemed he abandoned the duel with him and went treasure hunting. Inori finally understood what he meant. Masayoshi said it was a holy battle with the goddess on the line, and asked if he was making light of it. Well, yeah, Inori thought. Even if Inori regretted it now, Masayoshi being the winner won't change. Inori thought he didn't have any regrets at all, but chose just to stay silent. Masayoshi turned to look at Inori. He found him disgusting for being all weak and flimsy. He ate the meat on his hand and wondered why the goddess rated such a person highly. After eating it, he threw the bone towards Inori. Inori acted without thinking and quickly dodged. He started worrying, thinking he screwed up. He couldn't help but move by reflex. Masayoshi scoffed and smirked, calling Inori a sly fox. He waved his hand and walked away. Inori sighed at the goddess, shoving a troublesome fella to him. The goddess, who was reading a book, sneezed. She wondered if someone was spreading rumors about her, and if it was because she was a beauty that she had it rough. After all, she was a goddess who was proposed to by a human mere seconds after she summoned him. Now that she thought about it, she wondered what he was doing right now. He was probably starting fistfights with a neighboring kingdom. Well, winning against an irregular using the strength of the soul is futile, no matter how much he struggles. At the same time, it was nighttime, and Inori was hunting. He hunted Quetzos and bit them, drinking their blood. The strength of the soul is the strength of the mind. In other words, pride, greed, being selfish without a care about the world, and prioritizing one's interests to the point of being crazy. Even if the entire world becomes his enemy, a man who is said to be the exact opposite of justice, who annihilates things easily. The goddess was a little interested in what would happen going forward. Inori observed his status window. His name was displayed on top. He was no longer a human but a demon and a level 8 Baron class vampire. He had 2,325 health points with an additional 300 and 674. 15,070 mana points with an additional 3,003. 2,487 strength with an additional 300 and 680. 2,233 vitality with an additional 300 and 476. 1,961 dexterity with an additional 300 and 258. 2,711 agility with an additional 300 and 786. And 3,968 intelligence with an additional 612. His level up has stagnated as well. It cannot be helped. The only prey around here are Quetzos. It's on the level of a large-scale outbreak. He thought about Igiana and Date Masayoshi. This world has more challenging people mixed in than he thought. A place with slightly stronger magic beasts and good experience points. Perhaps expanding his area of operations to such a place would be better. A few days after the attack of Date Masayoshi, he set foot in a place just like this, where a dangerous monster was waiting for him. Not knowing that his first defeat and the impending death are waiting for him. A phantasmic jungle appeared in the usual mountains. This space, hidden with powers such as hallucination and illusion, was discovered by his magic eye of vision's skill. What he saw in the illusion world, which is isolated from the outside world, was magnificent nature, wolf-type magical beasts that he had not encountered before, and a giant tree. Inori thought that this place was definitely a very dangerous place. It was a scenery that's straight out of an RPG. No matter how he looks at it, it was a boss stage. This calls for the ultimate move, pretending not to see a thing. Make a U-turn and, just like this, return. He didn't notice the monster that came up behind him and bit him before he could finish his sentence. His eyes widened, seeing his cut-off arm fall to the ground. Blood dripped down his face as he wondered what was happening. He noticed it was his right arm that had been cut off and wondered where it went. He was sent flying without even knowing why. When he realized it, he had slammed into a tree trunk. No, that is what his left eye saw. His right eye, with its magic eye of vision, clearly saw the figure. Inori, who was leaning on the tree trunk, smirked at the beast before him. He appraised it, and its status window showed up. It's Fenrir, a wolf-type mythical beast. It had 40,500 health points and 12,600 mana points. Its blessing is Vessel of a King, and it had the title of Ash Wolf King. Inori thought that stuff like Fenrir really screams fantasy. It wasn't a demon beast, but a mythical beast. He thought that was something that appeared in the middle of the game. He held his cut-off arm, exclaiming about the pain. Fenrir intently watched him and asked the reason that brought him to this place. Inori was surprised that it spoke before answering that if he were to ask what reason he had, if he were to say, he was lost. Fenrir asked if what he was saying was he just wandered here while he was lost. Well, the story about being lost is not a total lie. Honestly, Inori had no intention of setting foot in this remote place. Truthfully, after he entered this place, his detection has gone wild and hasn't worked ever since. Because detection is only a blessing of this world, it's possible that it could face resistance from the world's power. He got a little overconfident. He should have used clairvoyance. Fenrir didn't believe his nonsense after he's killed his brethren. That was just Inori turning the tables on his challengers. Well, he sucked all of their blood, though. Fenrir stepped forward, saying none aught that matters anymore. In any case, he can't leave Inori alive after learning about this place. Inori said that since Fenrir was going to kill him anyway, it shouldn't bother asking him questions. Fenrir responded that he lost his right arm and magical weapons, so his defeat was already set. However, it soon stopped talking after watching Inori. Inori smirked, apologizing because he had to decline. He had no plans of dying. His right arm had grown back like it had never been cut off in the first place. Fenrir cursed at him after seeing his arm. Inori turned to his arm, stretching his fingers. He was regenerating it while they were talking, although his health points had gone down. Fenrir realized he really wasn't human, making Inori smirk. Indeed, he was a vampire. Fenrir roared and dashed to attack, shouting he was too dangerous to be left alive. Inori's smirk never left as he kicked the ground as fast as possible. He jumped up, smirking. His enemy had 3 times more agility, but he had the advantage over reaction speed thanks to his magic eye of vision. If he didn't miss the attack's first move, dodging should be no problem, was what he wanted to say. However, he had to pause after seeing Fenrir's first separate from his body and attack him. Inori held his arms up to defend, surprised about what it had done with its body fur. He couldn't help but curse. It wasn't looking good. Fenrir dashed forward, and Inori dodged to the side, activating true dark magic control. He pulled out the knives he had made and circled them around Fenrir. Fenrir flinched, but it was already too late. Inori had released control already. The knives aimed at Fenrir but didn't work on him. Inori didn't have the right cards to kill him right now. In other words, if they continue to fight, he'll definitely die. He dodged to the side. He'd like to use summoning magic to transfer and escape, but there's just one problem. Magic Eye of Vision is stocked up with magic circles of mental interference right now, and if he didn't look at the magic circle for summoning magic, he could not switch over. Also, the paper on which he transcribed the magic circles was destroyed by the earlier attack. He wondered what to do now as he threw the knives towards Fenrir. Fenrir repelled the knives and shouted Inori's weak attacks wouldn't work on him. It was futile. Fenrir once again released his body fur to parry the knife and attack Inori, injuring him badly and causing his eye to fall off. Fenrir told him that no matter how many times Inori threw his knives, it wouldn't work on him. So, he should stop his futile resistance and just die. Inori disappeared, and a magic circle appeared to where he was standing. Fenrir definitely felt him and wondered what happened. He looked around, wondering where Inori's body was. Suddenly, Inori appeared before Fenrir, pulling out his knife and stabbing Fenrir's eyes. Fenrir screamed in pain, making Inori smirk. He started looking for his eye, which had fallen off, and once he found it, he picked it up to put it back in. His revenge was successful. He wasn't just randomly throwing knives. He was carving out a summoning magic circle. It was a close call, but his magic eye of formation made it in time. That aside, he's stuck now. Fenrir's eyes continued to bleed as Inori watched him approach. He noticed that Fenrir's aura had changed. It seems he no longer recognizes him as prey, but as an enemy. Fenrir dashed to attack Inori. However, Inori just grinned before disappearing. With a magic circle below him, he appeared above the forest. He looked towards the castle and back to Fenrir, who jumped up to bite him. He bid goodbye, and with a flick of his finger, he disappeared. Fenrir was left alone, surprised. Inori wanted to call it a draw, but he didn't think he could kill him if they continued fighting. He arrived at his bedroom and decided just to call it his loss for now. He got beat up pretty badly, but gained a lot from the fight. First, he lacks firepower. No, it could be his weapons. They're all products of experimenting with random materials. It's not the right equipment he needed. Since he obtained quite a lot of materials, he decided to test some more. Second, he's confirmed the mystery of his body's regenerative abilities from yesterday's battle. His body can heal all sorts of injuries. Of course, his health points decreased, but he couldn't figure out the rules for losing health points. Sometimes, his intestines would rupture, but his health points wouldn't decrease at all. While other times, his health points would decrease rapidly out of nowhere. The Fenrir's fur bullets hit various parts of his body. Even if it pierced through his head, it only dealt 5 damage to him. In the case of a torn arm, that was about 80 damage. So basically, the damage simply reflects the amount of flesh lost. And about the weaknesses of such a body. His regeneration, it's as if his blood turns into flesh. So, this was what being a vampire feels like. His blood has regenerative properties. So, there's a high chance his heart is his weak point, seeing that it pumps blood to his body. It was a very vampire-like weakness. Also, it had nothing to do with Fenrir, but was about the second weakness. According to his research, vampires exist in this world, and their weakness is mithril. However, to him, mithril is not a weakness. His weakness is silver. Inori became a vampire in his third world. In other words, he was different compared to other vampires in this world. He had leveled up countless times in a world without skills or level ups by robbing them of their skills. His magic eye of formation couldn't memorize this world's magic circles, and this world's power measuring device couldn't even measure his magic powers. His skills are carried out without any regard to this world's rules. No, perhaps he's a being that defies the laws of the world. How entertaining. In the last few months, he has figured out his cheats, searched for them, and made them his own. Then, just like sharpening his dagger and cutting something to test it, he'd like to test his abilities in this world as his curiosity demands. He had something to use and had just the right kind of enemy now, too. Tonight, Inori decided to visit that place again. It would be a shame not to fight an enemy so worth fighting. He'll kill him with his own hands. Night came, and Fenrir explained that this forest was the land under the witch's pact. In exchange for her safe haven, they must exterminate anything that brings terror to this land. Inori responded in understanding, and Fenrir turned to him. He was standing beside him. Inori said Fenrir was the reason there was almost nothing but Quetzos in the forest. Fenrir didn't deny it. But Inori was still alive. Therefore, he cannot forgive someone who couldn't exterminate a mere pest. He cannot forgive himself for letting Inori escape for that one time. Fenrir growled, shouting how dare Inori step into this place again. This time, he will not let him go. Inori laughed and commented that Fenrir was as angry as ever. He asked him what was wrong, and if he was that upset that he had injured him. He provoked Fenrir, wanting him to get more angry. First, Inori needed Fenrir to build up more hate. He must become the lure himself to beat someone who is overwhelmingly superior in status. He smirked and asked Fenrir if this place was that important to him, and Fenrir answered that it was. This place, his brethren, is equivalent to his life. Fenrir released his fur and shot it towards Inori. Inori dodged and thought that Fenrir's motives had always been the same from the beginning until the end. To protect this land and to protect his brethren. It all boils down to this, as if he's born to protect. How perfect. As he thought, Fenrir was the one. It makes him want to kill Fenrir so badly. Shadows emerged from Inori's own and attacked Fenrir. Fenrir observed them, asking what this was. Inori grinned, saying that he'd recognize what it was if he had a good sense of smell. After sniffing, Fenrir couldn't believe it. It was his brethren. Inori snickered, saying it was a shame. He was one of his brethren, but these guys are his now. He asked Fenrir how it felt getting attacked by someone he was supposed to protect. The thought of seeing their dead bodies being manipulated by him. He smiled mockingly before saying they were no longer one of him. Fenrir growled and angrily cursed at him. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you love this manga. Have a good day.